Our next question comes from Amelia Boone, which is awesome. We just had her on the podcast a few weeks ago. I recommend highly listening to that episode. I was not part of that recording. I just loved hearing her experience and her story as like an obstacle racer, and just very obviously an extremely successful one. And she participated in 2 Barclays marathons, which I think is fascinating because that whole series of races and kind of what he does with his racing and how weird it is. It's just fun to hear from somebody who's participated in it. So anyway, you can go back and hear her episode with Andrea. But the question that she's asking us is, what are your shoe recommendations for Hallux Rigidus that aren't Hoka's? So first, can somebody say what, maybe David, you start with this. Tell us what Hallux Rigidus is, and then you can start to answer the question. We'll go from there.
Sure. So anatomically speaking, I mean, it's kind of in the name, right? Hallux Rigidus essentially means the hallux, the great toe, isn't moving. Limitus is limited. And so the movement, you're having a little bit of stiffness at the joint line, its ability to move usually into extension, have it come up and over so that you can lever from it. It creates a literal lever arm that you can get up and over and move from, and creates what we call a windlass mechanism to help create some intrinsic stiffness through the lower foot, through just the whole lower chain there. And when that's not working appropriately, we're not moving through the normal range. And it's actually kind of funny because I was going to bring this up with the previous question if this was something that was asked of me, but it wasn't. But sometimes people will supinate because of that. They can't get over it. So they will literally rotate over the outside of their foot if they truly are supinating because of a stiffness there or an instability elsewhere. And I feel like we didn't really touch on that much, but conversation for another time.
Well, thanks for bringing that up. That's a big point.
Yeah, like
you can throw shade at me for not asking you the question too.
Yeah, I know. Everyone listening, why did Nate not ask me my thoughts on that question? That's cool, but
he probably got biased because there was Achilles in it. He's like, well, that's dissertation. So
he was like, he's doing a PhD in Achilles, so let's just ask him. That's cool. But
David's opinion no longer matters.
But no, that's essentially what it means. It essentially means you can't move through the full range of motion through the great toe while we're literally levering off of it. And so when people can't move through the full range of motion, they start doing other things, regardless of what that may look like at the hip, knee, or ankle, or foot. And so that's essentially what it means. It's stiff. It's not moving through the full range of motion.
This is the shoe to use then, right? Zero shoes?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Just take the thing that puts you through the most range of motion possible.
You know what? It's like just
force
that
thing to be uncomfortable. Yeah.
Matt,
every time
I'll
you take a step,
it's
like a grade 5 joint manipulation. It's fine. Crack, 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 crack. Why is it cracking?
I wear zero shoes every day to work.
Me too.
So I was not trying to like poo-poo on them. I really enjoy using them. But
zero. I want to try your leather ones, by the way. If anybody from them is listeing, the leather ones look really cool. Nice. But I think they're out of stock.
I still have to try a pair of zeros.
Yeah,
they're nice.
We gotta get you a pair.
Oh man, I totally lost my train of thought. Oh, Hallux Rigidus.
That's okay.
So that's kind of what's happened. You have stiffness there. I think you have to know, is it truly stiff irreversibly, or is it something that you can work on from a PT standpoint and doing joint mobilizations and getting mobility back? There are some people that I've worked with who have fusions, which means that they put a pin through that joint because of advanced arthritis. And so the pain is mitigated by using a rod to prevent any joint motion. So they have true Hallux Rigidus. It will not move because it is pinned together. Some people just have progressive stiffness due to potentially something like osteoarthritis in that joint. So what type of stiffness you have and what is leading to your Hallux Rigidus matters as well in terms of if you should try to address it clinically versus just using a shoe as a Band-Aid. But there's plenty of situations where using shoes as Band-Aids is helpful. And even beyond Band-Aids, it might be your only option. So when you think of specific shoes, Matt, what shoes come to your mind and what components of shoes are important?
I'm going to need both of your help because I'm having a brain fart right now. I can tell you the components, but I'm trying to think of something that exactly matches this, and I'm having a little trouble.
All right, go with it.
And actually, Hoka is not on there because of something I'm going to bring up in just a second that's been a little different recently. David, you're going to...
Yeah, it depends how stiff we're talking.
Yeah.
I mean, normally you think of something that's a little bit rockered as a sharper toe spring. You don't have to use that range of motion as much. However, if you can't get into extension in the first place, something like an A6 glide ride might be a little much.
Right.
It might push you into that range and be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I think of something like a Saucony Endorphin Shift. I think of
There we go.
really any of the shoes, A6 Evo Ride, Trinusa, really anything that's got a little bit of a toe spring up front that just kind of takes that edge off a little bit as far as the range of motion that the great toe has to move through. But there's so many other great options as well. And like I think of something almost like an On Cloud Monster as well. That has a little bit more flexibility, so you will have to use that, but it's a little bit more suspensive. It doesn't quite make you use it as much. I'll let you continue though. I know you got the thought back.
The Shift was a great example. I don't know why I didn't think of that since it's one of my favorite shoes. But what you're going to be looking for is something that is appropriately stiff, that has a good forefoot rocker, but you got to be very careful with toe spring. Toe spring refers to how much your toes are held in extension. So the upward curve that happens at the front of the shoe needs to happen below your toes and not up into them. So my greatest example is I really enjoy the A6 Metaspeed Edge Plus. It was one of my favorites. Didn't quite make the top, but it was one of my favorites for last year. And I recently messed up one of my toes and had a lot of trouble with extension, and found I could not wear this shoe because of the amount of the extension that my toe had to go into just to sit there normally. So that's called toe spring. The thing underneath there is called, it's a forefoot rocker, right? So you want to make sure that your toes can rest in neutral in the shoe, right? So not in extension, not in flexion, in the middle, and then have a curve that meets the toes but doesn't jam them upward, that is appropriately stiff, and the shoe doesn't change. You can roll off of it. So the Shift, I think, is a great example. I can see both Nathan and David looking, and they're both thinking, you just got to be careful with that, because I've had people, and I think the Glide Ride is a great example where it's a great shoe. It's super rockered, but it also has an incredible amount of toe spring. So you need to have good toe extension to handle that shoe, and that may not work for somebody that has Hallux Rigidus and can't go there anyway, so you can't just be held there.
Topo Spectre.
That's another
option.
That's a good idea.
Spring.
Yeah.
Toe spring, slightly flexible, wide base in the forefoot. I wanted to grab it. I just can't reach it. Like I can see it.
I got it.
And I'm like, so it's another one, right? Where it's like, it's present, it's there, but it's balanced. It's not plated.
No.
So there's still a little bit of flexibility to it.
And I can agree on
that's one that could work.
So off topic, I can understand why the no Hoka thing. Nothing against Hoka, it's just a lot of their toe boxes tend to run kind of narrow. Like I'm experiencing that with the Challenger right now. My toe is finally healed that I can handle being in this shoe, which is great. But yeah, it can be a little rough on the toes, and they've over the years have increased the amount of toe spring, like the upward extension required. So that I can understand why maybe that's not working. But obviously, it depends on the Hoka shoe. So I'm not hating on them, and I encourage you not to push them out, but I think there's some factors that have to be combined all the right way to get what you want.
Yep.
And the question did ask for non-Hoka.
Yeah, that's fair.
Specifically.
Yeah,
so I think what's interesting, most of the shoes that we use specific examples for were Saucony shoes, but that's because they do a lot. They don't put toe spring really much in any of their shoes, even their racers. Like I'm holding, I have both the Elite and the Pro 3.
Well, and the Elite does.
It's not too much though. It looks
that's a pretty sharp toe spring.
It looks like more than it is because of the color of the foam. But the toe spring's pretty flat. The platform's pretty flat itself. But especially I think even the Speed and the Pro, from the Endorphin Speed and Pro, they're relatively flat for toe spring as well. But my number one was going to be the Shift as well. That's the one that I've had a lot of patients who I've worked with who've had the pin put in. That's the one that they've had a lot of success with. So
it's almost like the whole team at Saucony listens to a certain podcast and actually listens to us. I'm just kidding.
Cool.